I'd never go back to the way I used to farm. You know, I always used to joke that I ought to rename the farm the Priory, because you kind of go into rehab after you've had a lifetime of using artificial chemicals and fertilisers and so on. And actually the farm coughs and splutters and tries to get over this, and then gradually reasserts itself and rebuilds its strength. I feel we're heading to a new era of farming. In a funny sort of way, it's almost minimalist. It's stripping everything out that's unnecessary. Do nothing farming. I'm Ben Mead. I'm a dairy farmer. We farm just outside Portsmouth, not far away from Falmouth in Cornwall. There's something of a builder as well too, actually. Dog's body. Ecologist, observer of nature. The high input, high output system that I have inherited was definitely considered best practice. You know, there was an army of advisors who were saying, oh, well, you do this, that and the other. But essentially we were shoveling large quantities of grain into animals to get, you know, reasonably large quantities of milk back out to them. But that was bought at an immense cost. It was very much driven by sort of fossil fuel-based fertilisers and so on. And I really wasn't making much of a return on it. As you get older, you become interested in health and the health of your children and all of those sorts of issues. We kept coming back to all these markers of grass and natural diets and a form of natural farming system with diversity and biodiversity at its heart. And this is the thrust of things that we actually do on the farm here now. And so initially, I suppose, we started off on the chemical side, and we actually started looking at the soil. So we were using natural materials to try and balance our soil. So that was the initial stage. And then at a similar time, we started introducing more seeds and more diversity and more plant diversity. I keep going back to how does things work in nature? And actually, there's very little intervention. You know, there would normally be very little intervention with a petrol engine or a diesel engine and so on. So really think twice about starting those up. When we do cut for silage, we leave big strips of unmown areas, partly as a refuge for your biodiversity, your fauna diversity, but also as a seed bank as well too. The best seeds are the ones that you actually generate on farm. Just looking at these clover here. If you actually start breaking it all start breaking it open, you can actually start seeing the seeds, all the little clover seeds in there. So there's about 3 or 4 in there, and so that's just out of one stem. So I don't know, you estimate maybe there's 50 or more of those. Most people would have put this all in the silage clamp and the seeds wouldn't have reached any maturity, but you know, here we've got all our next generation of seeds that makes everything continue and recycle. So this is part of my do-nothing farming, trying to work out when they're actually viable and how the best way to use them without starting up a diesel engine is. One of the things that we do with seeds is that we put them out in front of the animals and try and get them to tread in. So here we've got the bovine version of Girl Power, haven't we? I mean, they're doing all my rotivating and seed sowing. Well, one of the things that you can do to get your cows to work for you, if they're trained in a paddock system, they'll usually follow you and they'll start walking up and down. So if, for example, it was wet and I had a whole handful of seed here, I could just be chucking it out here and the cows are all stamping it all in, and they're spreading the dung as well too. So, you know, they're rejuvenating the pasture. I haven't got to start up a diesel engine. And they got a bit of exercise as well too, so everybody wins.
And the more I was thinking about this, the more I thought, well, actually, how much is to do with the animals actually harvesting the seeds and them going through the gut? Because there were a lot of farmers, old timers, who used to feed clover seed into their animals in the milking parlour, and then they would go out and the dung would act as the fertiliser and the seed store. And of course, the old shepherds used to fertilise the mountains. They'd drive the sheep down into the clover seed pastures and then take them back up the mountain, and you get clover up the mountains. So do we actually really need to harvest the seed? Do we go into fields that have got a very, very high level of seed and then get the cows to graze them for 2 or 3 hours and then move them back onto another part of the farm and actually put them on a field that's looking a bit sparse? So there's an awful lot that we can actually do where the cattle are doing most of the work for us, and it's fundamental to an ecological way of farming. You've got to get out of that mindset of continually wanting to start up a powerful diesel engine and go and listen to rock music in your tractor cab.
I remember the bovine gull power I was talking about earlier, and those cows running up and down that field. This is exactly what we did, but 6 months earlier, and this is the result. You've got a huge crop of chicory here, and actually it's very, very simple. It's just keeping your seed in the corner of the field and being there to spread out every time you're moving your cattle. Ideally you want a little bit of rain and they chip everything up and you get a fantastic take like this. And then if we actually start looking at some of the plants, you can see all these seeds forming in here. So when just on this one stem here, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Oh, I can't count beyond 10. There's probably 1,000 seeds on this plant here from my one seed that actually took and germinated. I mean, it's incredible, isn't it? You know, how can we go wrong?
The more I go around farms and see monocultures, the more I feel that there's actually something broken with the system, even though very, very few people are actually prepared to admit it or do anything about it. You know, you've got to just get on and do things, but as long as you're following the basic ecological principles, I believe the type of farming that I'm actually evolving here, well, I feel that's slightly presumptuous to say I'm evolving, because of course actually I'm just an observer, a casual observer, and trying to make sure that it's allowed to evolve, or not, or rather not step in and do anything to stop it evolving. I feel that it's probably the most genuine form of sustainable farming.